Economist Edition. I'm your host, Quinn McCann, and today we got a great topic to debate. We're going to talk about, should minimum wage be kept the same or should it be raised? I'm joined by Dom Massimo from SJ News. How you doing, Dom?
Thanks for having me, Quinn. I'm excited to be on here. Can't wait to talk about why minimum wage should stay the same.
I'm joined by Alex D. McLaughlin from Mountain Prep News. How you doing, Alex?
Oh, hey, how you doing, Quinn? This is Alex McLaughlin, D-Mac from Malvern Prep News here, excited to discuss the topic of minimum wage.
All the way from San Diego, the notorious Andre Quintiliani from KBWN Channel 4 News. How you doing, Andre?
Compelling and rich. Good to see you again, Quinn. That's right, I'll be advocating why minimum wage should be increased.
Alright, this topic has brought a lot of controversy in today's economy, so let's get started. So the first question I have for you guys is about unemployment. So how is increasing the minimum wage or keeping it the same going to affect jobs?
Raising minimum wage would destroy jobs, causing an increase in both unemployment and poverty. Jamie Richardson, the vice president of the fast food chain White Castle, said that he would have to close almost half his stores and lay off thousands of workers if the minimum wage were to increase. Places like McDonald's are looking to lay off people if the minimum wage is increased. Places like Seattle, where the minimum wage has already increased, McDonald's has started replacing their workers with kiosks. Why would they not replace their workers who would be making almost $30,000 a year with $2,500 kiosks?
So, as an advocate for minimum wage, first of all, I believe the dispute between helping low-income workers and the amount of jobs that are available actually shouldn't really be an issue anymore. And that's because when Obama left, the unemployment rate was actually at 4.8%. That number has since decreased to 4.3 in July. And then now actually in the most recent poll in November, it's actually at 4.1, and that's stabilized. That's very good. Unemployment rate's lowest it's been in a long time. And therefore, if we're thinking more along the lines of helping low-income workers with the unemployment rate declining, why can't wages be increased, let alone minimum wage? It's just one of those things where increasing minimum wage would actually help the economy.
So, Andre, I have something to show you a little bit when it's the supply and demand graph. So let me show you real quick. So, Andre, as you can see, I don't know if you're aware, but the quantity in the red, those are the amount of workers fired from the equilibrium price at the black. So let's say the equilibrium price quantity is 50 and the red quantity is 20. You actually fire 30 workers. So I don't know if you're aware about that. Also, as you can see, this creates a surplus. So by creating this surplus, you take the quantity in the blue and the quantity in the red, and then you subtract the two, and that's actually your unemployed. So the higher you increase the minimum wage, the more unemployed people we are going to have.
So yes, Quinn, obviously there are going to be people that are getting laid off, and that's not to say that competition will not increase though across the board, and that's a really good thing actually. So the Fair Labor Standards Act, yes, it says that if you make over $500,000 a year across the board, you have to pay minimum wage. So for small businesses and large corporations, either way, that's going to increase. So that also increases competition. People coming out of college that are expecting just to, go work at McDonald's or go work at a really low wage company are going to want to have that, motivation to get educated and get a degree that allows them to get a better job. Also, the people that are living off of disability that don't actually need disability are going to want to come out and say, you know what, I'm going to want to work now because I'm able to make more per hour. So the competition is going to increase. People are going to want to go out and find jobs, and the jobs available there are a lot of jobs available, will continue to come up, and people will be able to find employment.
So the next question I have for you is about low-income workers in the economy. So is it going to help or is it going to hurt the economy?
Increasing the federal minimum wage would disproportionately harm the poorest areas of the United States. In 2015, Mississippi had the lowest cost of living at 83.5% of the national average, while Hawaii had the highest at 168.6% of the national average. In areas like Mississippi, where the cost of living and average incomes are especially low, employers would need to spend proportionally more to pay the minimum wage employees than employers in higher cost areas like Hawaii, and yet would be unable to cover the cost by raising prices because their consumers would not be able to afford them. According to Andrew G. Biggs and Mark J. Perry of the American Enterprise Institute, the results of this disparity could be disastrous for small communities around the country.
So increasing minimum wage would actually help the economy. If we increase minimum wage, more money will be placed into the economy. What does that actually mean, though, Quinn? And first of all, household spending would increase. Obviously, people are making more money. They're going to go out and spend more. That's only going to make the cycle keep moving along, progressing. It's also going to boost the nation's GDP. An increase in minimum wage would actually even lead to more job opportunities. People who are unskilled workers coming out of, whether that's college or struggling to find a job, who find that the minimum wage is increasing, is actually going to go out and strengthen their drive to get a job. And that's only going to make competition better for big time corporations like McDonald's, etc., and even help small businesses.
Now, looking from the perspective of business owners, 80% of small business owners said that raising the minimum wage would hurt most of the small businesses in the country. Forbes reported that an increase in the minimum wage has already led to the closure of many stores and the cancellation of many stores yet to open. Think about it this way. If a dishwasher is currently making minimum wage at a restaurant and a cook who is more skilled is making $15 an hour, if the minimum wage is increased, where is the line drawn? Then the cook will want to be making more money also.
So, Dom, what do you think those workers would want?
Now, both of these groups would want an increase in their pay, and really, would anyone be making more money at that point? Because then there will be an increase in consumer goods. The Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago stated that if the minimum wage was to be increased, fast food restaurants would pass on almost 100% of their increased labor costs onto the consumers, and that other firms may do the same.
So DuPay actually makes an analogy which I want to bring up. So think of it like this. If there's people that drive at a speed limit of 70 miles an hour, even though the speed limit is 65, and that speed limit is then reduced to 55 miles an hour, there's obviously going to be people that are still going to drive above the speed limit, but just lowered altogether because the speed limit's lowered. And, a similar logic applies to a case like minimum wage, where the probability of detection, with detecting people who are making more and people who are making less, actually varies based on the extent of the violation. And that violation in the analogy is driving above the speed limit, and in minimum wage it's the violation of who's regulating, who's making what, and what people are making less and what people are making more. So
Andre, I really like the analogy about the speed limit and how it relates to the informal sector of the economy.
And you got to ask yourself why. If the unemployment rate's falling, regardless of the wage status, should minimum wage not be increased because of too many people being squeezed out of jobs? And that's actually not true. Also, inequality would go down, and that's another point I wanted to bring up to you, Quinn. This gap between the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer is actually going to keep getting smaller and smaller if the minimum wage is increased. Again, income would be raised, as well as household and consumer spending. That's a huge check, a huge plus, and it's, again, only going to help the economy. And then how about retirement? So, when is enough really enough? Okay, so, and then, this arises another question, completely different point, Quinn, and that's retirement. And you got to ask yourself, when is enough really enough? So last year, American workers estimated to be $6.6 trillion shy of the money they need to comfortably retire. Social Security trustees estimate by 2033, all of the trust funds or Social Security will actually run dry. And this is because retirement funds will make up deficits for the disability programs. So for the disability programs, the retirement funds are actually having to overlap the disability funds and pay for them. So the retirement funds are actually losing money as well, and people aren't getting the money that they should to comfortably retire. And what does this mean? So it doesn't mean there won't be any more Social Security, It just means that the Social Security money will be heavily decreased, and it will rely on Social Security taxes. So the income for Social Security is actually being relied on by the tax that everyone pays for Social Security. And by 2033, that number will be heavily reduced. Why does this matter? This matters because if we raise the minimum wage, we can actually rebuild the Social Security trust fund that's being usurped. The majority of money that Social Security relies on actually, like I said, comes from taxes. So if unskilled minimum wage workers who are making just enough to support their family, not enough to support their family, or even enough to support their family, but they know they're going to need to rely on Social Security when they get older, this will essentially, even though they're paying more taxes for Social Security, because the more money you make, the more taxes you're going to have to, the more money you're going to have to pay in taxes, because if you increase the minimum wage, you're going to have to pay more taxes. It's actually going to help in the long run, because when those people go to apply for Social Security when they're older, they're getting the benefits and they're getting the amount of money they need to retire.
Raising the minimum wage would decrease employee benefits and increase tax payments. While Andre talked about tax security, let me put this into perspective. If a single mother working full-time is earning the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, she would be worse off by $260 if the minimum wage were raised to $10.10. While her income increases by $494, she loses $71 in earned income tax credit refunds, and she would then have to pay $37 more in payroll taxes and $45 more in state income taxes. She also loses $88 in food stamp benefits and $528 in child care subsidies. This would be hurting the single mother more than putting her into a better position.
Instead of giving my opinion, I went out to several different franchises and interviewed employees, owners, managers, and just several people to get a public view of what they think of the crucial minimum wage debate. So I went to Wegmans, McDonald's, Pro Cuts, Great Valley Diner, Jamba Juice, and Panera Bread, and I just wanted to get a public opinion instead of mine. So here we go.
I think as an individual, yes, it should be raised because you can't survive on it. You can't own a home, own a car, buy groceries. But as a business aspect, I don't think we should, because then you'd have to raise everybody's wages, and it's going to cause businesses to go under. And it's just going to cause a lot of problems in the long run.
So business aspect, you wouldn't want to, but
Right.
as a person,
Correct.
for your children, you would like to.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank
You're
you so
very
much.
welcome.
Thank you, Edna. So what is your stance on the minimum wage?
I think the minimum wage should be raised every year to, as a cost of living increase, like they do for Social Security to disability people or SSI people or the government people who always get raises every year, and the commoner does not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Thank
That's
you.
really
Have a good day.
I think minimum wage should be raised for those that have a skill set or have had additional schooling or training. A person working at a typical fast food restaurant or something, you don't need any additional skills for that. So I feel that should be minimum wage. I think it should be based on the job that you're doing, and whether or not you've had to go to additional schooling. Like for us, for example, we have to go to additional training. We go to beauty school. We have to take a state test, and then we're licensed. So we have to have a license to do that. So college people, they should be starting out. You have a degree. You should be starting, higher than even me, who I just have a basic trade, or but I'll say the fast food people that want these astronomical, the hourly wages, I don't agree with. I don't think.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So you're a pro cut, so you guys go above the minimum wage a little.
Yes, we
because
do
of-
start
because
above
of
the minimum wage because, again, you have to have a
The
license
skills,
in order
additional
to.
license.
Right.
Yep.
And then we also base our starting salary on how long you've been doing it, how long you've been in the field. Someone brand new, right out of school, isn't going to start at the same amount as someone that's been doing it for 10 years. So again, we base it all based on the skill set.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Minimum wage, I believe it should be maybe raised just a small bit. I don't believe too much, because if we raise too much, we don't know what the cost of, if that can raise goods or anything like that, the demand of goods, or, you know, I believe it's a sticky situation, but if anything, I think it should be raised.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much.
I think it should be raised because I think right now at $7.25 it's not exactly a livable wage. If you're trying to raise a family, or even if you're like single, trying to afford an apartment or a house or anything like that, you're not going to do it on $7.25 an hour. Especially if you have kids or anything like that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wayne.
No problem.
I think it depends on how much we're interested in raising it or lowering it. My view on it is that a job that somebody works minimum wage on is not meant to support a family. It's meant to give young kids experience and other people who just need a second job or want extra hours for extra money for this, that, or the other thing. So as a local small business owner, I personally couldn't afford to pay people much more than minimum wage. I do pay more than minimum wage because I think minimum wage is a bit low, but some of the talks about it going to $15 an hour are just outrageous from my point of view, because I couldn't afford to employ the number of people that I need and sell smoothies. I would have to sell so many more smoothies to be able to make it worthwhile. And I think that it would end up automating a lot of the jobs, and thus people losing their jobs altogether.
Okay. Thank you.
So there's my spiel on minimum wage. Hope you like the public's opinion. Thanks, Quinn, for having me on the show, and I'm ready to be a winner.
As much as I love the information you have, DMAC, it's not what I asked you to do. It was a debate, man, so I'm sorry.
Thanks for having me, Quinn. It's been a pleasure. Andre, great debating against you, man. AMAC, good effort, buddy. So like I said, just keep minimum wage where it is, and keep the economy going, man.
I really appreciate being here today. It was really great to talk about this debate, and I just really hope the federal government can increase minimum wage once and for all as the states continue to.
That about wraps it up for our episode of Around the Horn. Thanks, Andre and John, for participating today. One of the best debates we had on the show. Stay tuned for next episode on net neutrality. Have a good one. Goodbye.